Okay. Yes, I think we're live now. Good Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you may be. I am Fatih Baji. Welcome to the Digest News. With me today is a lineup of some very beautiful and smart intergenerational Gambian women. You know, we have some very young voices here and the older generation, and we're here today to talk about gender-based violence in the Gambia and of course our response to the new helpline that was initiated a couple of weeks ago, the GBV helpline. And I guess last week as well, or actually this week, there has been another development, a positive one, which is the launch of the child line as well, was initiated in the Gambia. So we are out here to brainstorm or discuss the women's perspective, because often we know that a lot of issues that are affecting women are discussed, are strategized, or legislations are made on behalf of women. Very rarely women have voices, you know, on platforms. So I thought it necessary to hear it from the horse's mouth, as we call it. So we've got a different women here. I'll be joined by some other women. Deja Batu will be joining us in a moment. Mama Linger Sar will be joining us in a moment. Sarah Tejabi and Aisha Balde. Assalamu alaikum askan bi maa ngi leen di nuyu bu baax a baax di leen dalal fii nii si Digest News. Man la F Badji ma ñëwoon fii nii rek tey pour waxtaan ak yéen si li nga xam ne mooy gender based violence si Gambia mooy toroxtaange jigéen daal fanaa noonu lañ ko dee waxee si Wolof. The panelists would help me out if I'm not right, but loolu moo taxoon ñu génn si pour ñu waxtaanee ko ak tamit nombre bu ees bi nga xam ne Gambia NGOs yi ak government bi ñëw nañ together ñu bokka ñu consolidate seen effort si ñu génnee nombre bu bees bi nga xam ne nit ñi mun nañ koo use ñu call su fekkee ne ñu ngi jigéen yaa ngi am any sort of ñu ngi face any sort of violence, basically gender based violence. moo taxit ñu génn si ñu ne ñu jàppale ñu dooleel jigéeni Gambia comme ñoom itamit seen kaddu ak seen voice ñu mun koo dégga. Yeah, loolu moo taxoon ñu génn si hane bi mbaadiŋol ntalam F Badji ngal bisimila jandolong the Digest News kal tentu kal jay taimolal me alon kal kata kanan jibe jang nimbadi musol le fintita dum bi purunga kachake kacha me alon ko musola gender based violence male ko fanya manika kawala dum ko muso torandi menna dal violence me alon ko ka muso batandi ka muso torandi bayri naliyak akala mutanyi wati tambila ye nomba kuto fintindile nomba me alon ko wole be nim muso be toro kono wala bata kono futu bun kono lemwo wala society kono o family kono aso nomba call nole abe makoiro soto nole nyame wol bulani ye kacha. So pintitan na wala purka kacha. In a moment we'll be opening the phone lines. I think I've put that on the description if people want to join in. My co-technicians, I think on the Digest News, would put in the link for Zoom if you wanted your face to show up, or if you want to call on WhatsApp, the number is there for you to call. But at least the first 45 minutes, I would like to give opportunity to the panelists to discuss these issues. So to start with, I'll briefly allow the panelists to briefly introduce in 1 minute, introduce themselves and also tell us how they feel when they heard about the new helpline. So I've got Absa on the screen now. So Absa, you go first.
Thank you so much, Fatu. Hi, everyone. My name is Absa. I am a women's rights activist and a feminist. I think to answer your question, I think it is, I actually believe it is a step in the right direction to actually have a helpline that makes it accessible to all victims in the Gambia who may need help and support when they encounter violence. And I think that, I mean, it's long overdue. The reality is that this was needed a long time ago. To have it now is a great thing. Hopefully it will help us as a society to be better people and a better community.
Thank you. Thank you, Absa. Maimunasi, we have Maimunasi online. Maimuna, are you here? You are on mute. You're on mute, Maimuna. Yangi on mute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, fellow panelists Fatu, Mina, Absa, Tufa, and the host Fatu. Thank you so much for inviting me to this very important discussion. As you know, my name is Maimuna C. I'm a Gambian residing in Norway. I'm a feminist and a gender activist. And I'm very honored to be in this very, very important discussion talking about gender-based violence. And as Fatu mentioned, we just really have a hotline, the first time in the history of the Gambia, a hotline for victims of gender-based violence. So I think it is a step in the right direction. It is something that we've been waiting for, but as the discussion goes on, then we'll talk more about the hotline. My wish is that it should be a hotline that is not just in existence, but something that should be accessible as well. Because when we talk about gender-based violence, we know about the laws that are there and everything that has been there, the policies, but how are they accessible? Are they in, or is everything just in existence? So I'm looking forward to a very fruitful discussion, more like nuanced picture of what is gender-based violence actually when we talk about it. We are talking about gender, which means that it is not just violence against women, but men too, because this is about gender. And when we talk about gender, we talk about women, we talk about men. We cannot leave out men when we talk about gender-based violence, especially against women, because I think that would be that we will focus more on women, but as well as the wide-ranging forms of gender-based violence, from partner violence to domestic abuse to prostitution, trafficking, because gender-based violence factor is a wide spectrum. And when we discuss it today, usually we just talk about women, domestic violence, but today I want the discussion to widen the discussion more and talk about all the different aspects and the spectra within which one can define gender-based violence. I'll stop there for now.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's the aim today, really. It's a broad topic and it's a broad subject area, but really we would be touching on almost all the, if not everything that surrounds gender-based violence. Maybe it would not be too much into detail because we've only got an hour and a half, but this is an ongoing conversation. This is just the start. I hope that I can have an opportunity to talk to you all individually, to look at individual violence, you know, because you all are specialists in your own field, or you are activists, you're very passionate to talk about issues that are affecting women. But you rightly said, Maimuna, gender-based violence is not only about women, but it's also about men. And I think Fatu, when we get into the conversation, Fatu Balde would help us in understanding what it is. I'll move on to Mina, Mina Mane, to introduce herself and tell us what she feels, what her reaction is to the helpline.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mina, and I am a gender advocate, like for both men and women, of course. I am interested in social issues as well, and I'm an advocate of political advocate. And I am really impressed to hear about the domestic violence helpline, at least for the first time in Gambia. I feel it's a very progressive issue that we're having in Gambia, because given that gender-based violence is one of the common issues that happen in Gambia, and it also needs addressing. And the domestic helpline is one of the main source of contact that will help people to report domestic violence issues and also find ways and means of addressing them.
Thank you, Mina. And then we move on to Tufa.
Hi, Fatu, thanks for having me, and hi to all these amazing women on here. So my name is Tufa Fatu Diallo. I am a feminist and anti-rape activist, and also the founder of Tufa Foundation. The helpline, which is 1313, as Absa mentioned, to name that, is 1313. I guess like when we all heard the news, I guess we all have two kinds of feelings about it. One is we're grateful and it's exciting to hear for the first time there's a number someone can press in the age of technology. Almost everyone has a cell phone. And to know that there's someone on the other side of the line, it's awesome for survivors or victims or people that are in the midst of a situation that they can't get help from anywhere else. But at the same time, as Maimuna has mentioned, is this also just another structure? Is this also just another tick box that we tick? Who is on the other side of the line? Who is the one picking up to speak to these people in their most vulnerable time? When, language matters, when rescue matters, when every little detail is very tender and important. So I hope that when we have this discussion today, we will bring to light all the concerns we have on that. But we are excited, but at the same time concerned and want to know more about how productive and effective it really is on the lives of victims and survivors. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we are meant to have Aisha Balde joining this conversation because she's part of one of the organizations that established this helpline. She knows a lot about it, and we are relying on her to give us a background or an overview of how this is set up and who are the people manning the helpline and what sort of trainings they have. She's not yet here, but I hope that as we go along, she will join the program. So we move on to Fatou Balde. Fatou, welcome. Fatou Balde, MBE. I always forget the MBE. That's very important to mention.
It's okay. It's okay. I forget too sometimes. Hello, good afternoon to you all. Fatou, thank you again for organizing such a needed conversation and for inviting me. Now, it's, as everyone has mentioned, it's amazing that we have this helpline. Long overdue. For me personally, the fact that we're sitting here today talking about having a helpline today just shows that how little gender-based violence is taken seriously. The fact that until today we didn't have a helpline where women can access support just shows how little support women have around gender-based violence. So I applaud the people who've worked really hard and pressed the need for us to have this line. That's an excellent initiative. But I must agree with the speakers and buttress the fact that there is a need beyond having the helpline, the support that follows. It's one thing having a helpline, well and good, but what happens when women phone in needing support? So if, for instance, a woman facing violence phones in and the woman doesn't have a place to go to, needs psychosocial support, we have to ensure that there is support available after the phone call. It shouldn't just end at the phone call. So I am looking forward to a very fruitful conversation today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, viewers, you've seen, you've heard from our beautiful panelists, very inspiring people on the panel today. I've been attacked by some men. They said, why did you have a full women panelist, all female? And I said, this is unapologetic. I did it on purpose because often, as I said, men talk on our behalf and we do have voices and we need to raise those voices. And I can see that a lot of people are watching right now. So thank you very much for all of you who have joined. We are going to now get into the meaty part of the discussion. Let's look at gender-based violence, Fatou Balde. When I posted the helpline, a lot of people say to me, Fatou, this is not an issue in the Gambia. This can be settled within the family level. Gender-based violence is a imported phenomenon from the West to the Gambia. And I went on to the UNFPA website and I looked at some statistics of GBV in the Gambia, and I realized that 1 in 4 women in their lifetime have faced either sexual violence or emotional abuse or physical abuse. And 26% of married women have experienced one form of violence or another. And they've conducted a research where 40% of Gambian women feel that it is okay for their husbands or partners to hit them. And then the research went further to say that 75% of Gambian women or girls have gone through FGM, and 30% of our girls or women were married off before the age of 18. So for someone to tell me that GBV is not an issue in the Gambia with that background is shocking to me. But I also feel that that might be due to the misconception or lack of understanding of what GBV is. So Fatu, I'm going to go to you first to actually give an overview or tell us the different aspects of GB to your own understanding from a Gambian context. What is it? What is gender-based violence?
Thank you again. Sorry, I got a bit too excited about the helpline and I didn't introduce myself. So my name is Fatu Balde. I am the founder of Women in Liberation and Leadership, WIL. My background is sexual and reproductive health, and I'm a strong advocate for the advancement of women's rights in the Gambia. So gender-based violence, as per definition, really means when a person experiences harm or when harm is put towards a person just based on their gender. So if a man or a husband beats a wife and they're beating the wife because of their gender, because they are a woman, which is very, like for instance, domestic violence, it's very common in the Gambia. It's one very common violence against women that happens in the Gambia. And I'm going to link this to the reason why people would argue that gender-based violence is not an issue. The fact that violence against women, it's so normalized in our society, it has become a norm. I would like to ask, how many women are here right now in this panel? How many of us have experienced a form of violence because we are women? Either we've been beaten, sexually abused, harassed. How many of us? I have experienced a form of gender-based violence. Raise your hand on this panel if you have experienced a form of gender-based violence. Yeah, we cannot see Maimuna. Maimuna, can we see you? So how many Gambian women are here? So the global statistics are showing us 3 to 4 women. Every 3 or 4 women you see have experienced gender-based violence. For the Gambian saying that gender-based violence doesn't exist, all of us women sitting here, we have all experienced one form of gender-based violence. So we cannot allow for other people to speak on our behalf to tell us whether we have experienced gender-based violence or not. Because we are sitting here, we don't need the WHO definition, we don't need the UN definition. We as Gambian women sitting on this platform are telling Gambian that we have experienced violence. I know the couple of speakers earlier have mentioned the need for us to talk about, when we talk about gender, we mention men. Yes, excellent, great to work with men on gender-based violence, but we cannot ignore the fact that when we talk about gender-based violence, it is women that are most affected. It is women who face violence more than men. Yes, violence does happen to men, but in most cases, it is women who are the victims. So there is a need to engage men, there is a need for us to talk to men so that we can change those unlearned norms, those norms that our men are taught from a very early age as a man, that they are the man and they can get away with things, they can get away with abuse women, and that's okay. We must change that narrative. We must teach our boys from an early age that violence against women is unacceptable. It's a violation of the rights of women and girls. We start that at a very early age. So I do acknowledge the need to work with men, but also I am tired of every time people sit to talk about gender-based violence, we say men, but men too, but men too. We have to acknowledge the fact that violence against women affects women more than men, and the men are usually the perpetrators. Let's start the conversation from that.
Thank you very much. I think that's very clear definition. We don't need a UN definition or WHO, Gambian women are saying one way or the other, we have faced violence in our lifetimes. So I think that is enough. And it's, as I always say, it's not a competition. It's not about nyom ak nyon. You know, when I did the line up, it's not about because we know that we are the most affected. It's gender, it's men and women, basically. It's not the sex, but it's, you know, what you term as a female and what you term as a male, or masculinity and femininity. But we know that GBV affects women more than men, as you said, and we also know that men are mostly the perpetrators. And of course, we would allow them to be part of the conversation. Of course, we cannot deal with issues like this without involving men. But I think we also do have a right to speak about the things that affect us. So thank you very much. I am going to turn on to Maimuna C. Does anybody have anything to say before I move on about the definition, the panel, before I go to Maimuna? Does anyone else have something else to add?
I guess to kind of say what he said in summary in a local language or a few local languages would be great, because it's hard to tackle something. And most of the conversation around GBV doesn't exist in the Gambia is because they do not even understand what you're saying when you say GBV, right? And I think all these English terminologies, for most people that say that, are also people that are not very in tune with statistics or have the ability to translate into their livelihoods what that means. Also, I think that conversation around when we always want to bring in the men thing to kind of justify why we are talking about women, to me, it just sounds like the Black Lives Matter conversation versus the All Lives Matter. When you're like Black Lives Matter and someone jumps in and says All Lives Matter, it's like, yes, we know, but we're talking about the people that are mostly affected by this issue. So as a Black person, just look at it from that perspective. It's really not rocket science. But also, mbadingol me min kachakang fatu balde ya fanyamen wala willa foundati abasata kanya minon GBVT andu ninga jibe na kangoto nsafo mandikan kango, because I'm kind of comfortable with that. Walam kani toro ni kuya nin tonyero la mo kang biting amari la musia kang wala la keya kang dorong kamo jibe ye ni kuya la kang ye ni toro la kang ye balajata dimingo la kang biting amari mu musoleti wala mu kewaleti bimbe wala kachaka. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Fatu, if I can just come in.
Sarata.
Hi, Sarata.
Hi, Sarata. Welcome.
Hi, ladies.
Yes. Tufa, I didn't realize you speak this very good Mandinka, actually.
I am a bit Cameroon.
Yeah, summarize cool. What important about to speak in our local languages. In the message as many people as possible. Muso member feeling Farouk on a member Santo Rabala Binde or in the audio way. Probably somebody would help us. I think WhatsApp audio. They said you come only karang no ka long because kabring and you post you can enter personally. Moja malka GBV. Ka jahasele aning kom conflict or many along with a case work on a coming song kamesa or kewana muso was woman ke kuti me along kumbole kachakan right now is deeper than that, you know, is come to fire for nyamendurum kamoji beka tajirinte aka marida hakelate musolemat yaje wala hakelate kewalamat mo kacha sifal andum form sol siata ngamira lafta tala no maimuna ya pray form dantang form wole den ngadum into munatin na nying sifal kake. Because model ni ko GBV the rongi camera la ko mbe domestic abuse da mala foka mo aspect cleanness but in kacha mbele fela ka do all the different aspects many along ko it's connected to GBV. It's not just the domestic abuse we want to talk about so we want to look at everything. So thank you very much for that Mandinka translation. I'll move to, and please do speak in the language that you're comfortable. Wolof, because I can speak Wolof and I can speak Mandinka as well. So, but don't speak to me in Fula or Jola because I won't be able to respond. I'm gonna move on to Maimuna. Maimuna, see, you wanted to add something, and I would like you to touch on the various elements of GBV, the different types of violence under GBV, before we look into the courses. Somebody's just joined called Adam Assar. I'm not sure I should be having an Adam Assar in this meeting. Is it Aisha Balda using Adam Assar? Because I don't want to be accepting anyone whom I'm not supposed to be accepting. So Aisha Balda, if you're watching and you are the person called Adam Assad on Zoom, let us know before I accept you, because it's not yet time for us to allow external callers. So Maimuna, come in, Maimuna.
Thank you, Fatou, because Fatou Balde gave a very good definition of gender-based violence, what it is. And I would just want to add that when we talk about gender-based violence, we're not talking about violence against women, you inflicting violence on women because I'm a woman, but another important aspect of it is that because you are a man as well, and with that come privileges. And based on those privileges, you think that you can abuse me because I'm a woman. The masculinity part of it is very important. I think most of the time we miss that part of it, that men do this, not just because I'm a woman, but because you are a man, and based on your gender as a man, you feel privileged. It's just like racism. You feel privileged. And most of the men, when we talk about male privilege in Gambia, most men will say that, but we don't do that in Gambia. Man, I'm sisters, my sister, but that is different. It's just like you talking to a racist saying that you've been racist against me and the person is trying to justify it, but I have a Black woman as a wife. But that doesn't mean that you're not racist. Those aspects of the patriarchal society that we live in our society, that make men, the norms and traditions that make men feel that the toxic masculinity, we would call it if we want to, that makes it gender-based violence accepted in our society. That is what we should talk about. That is why we bring in men. I'm not, for myself, I'm against the he for she kind of thing. And I would say it anyway, because when we talk about women issues, we talk about women issues. We see already on Facebook, when this program came up, men have started, you just don't use the gender card. This is not about the gender card. It's not about we or against the men, or we being bashing Gambian men. It's not that. It goes deeper than that. It goes deeper than that. Most of the men are sitting down. How do we raise our kids? How do they understand gender-based violence? Like you're saying, Gary, it's not just about you say how manaka meseng wahbu sew sikirbi. It goes beyond that. It's not just that. It goes beyond that. And how do we understand this? When we talk about female genital mutilation, how many people understand that this is gender-based violence? We just call it harmful traditional practice. But actually, it is a violence against women. We talk about even this njamu and everything that we do to beautify ourselves, to objectifying women to the extent of making them victims of violence. That is violent. And we all grew up thinking that njamu and all those things that we do is kind of beautifying us. No, it is not. It is embedded in our traditional and cultural norms that makes us internalized by us as we grew up, and we accepted it as a kind of beauty kind of thing. It's not. It is violence against women. We talk about trafficking in women. We talk about prostitution. Look, I did my research in prostitution in Gambia and trafficking, and I talked to these women, and I know what they go through. It's gender-based violence. And when we talk about it, what you hear from Gambia is that no, it's not part of our culture. So let's not even talk about it. Do we talk about this hotline that has been open now? Is it accessible to prostitutes as well? That they can call, or I don't want to call them that, but sex workers and everyone that is being affected by gender-based violence, not just trying to sort out who are the real victims of gender-based violence and who are not the real victims of gender-based violence. We have to make sure that as advocates, what we do is to make sure that everyone comes on board. We do not accept a society where our norms and our cultures allows us to sit down and sort out who should be the real victims and who are not real victims, and who are real perpetrators and who are not real perpetrators. Just because of your status in society can protect you that, oh, he is a minister, he doesn't do this. Or because of your status in society, so you should be exempted from. We have to look at it in a whole. You know, my English sometimes is very funny because of this.
Yeah, you have the Norwegian language.
Yeah, the foreign language, but I hope people understand. Li ma doon wax si lifin boo ma bàyyee rek ma wax ko si Olof. Mooy ne ñu ngi wax fi about gender-based violence. Fatou Balde Tufa wax na ko si Mandinko. Fatou explain mooy ne mel ni yow soo xoolee ne jigéen bi mun nga koo toroxal because jigéen la nga néewal ko doole jël ay rights am si loxoom def ko loo xam ne naka sudut noonu loo xam ne doo ko doon def sa moro bi góor li ma ci yokka mooy ne loolu noonu yaa ngi ko def because jigéen bi jigéen la waaye am na yeneen tamit yaa ngi ko def because yow da nga fiil ne yow góor nga te suñ aada ak suñ cosaan may na la doole boo xam ne yaa ngi tooga moom fiil nga ne yow mun nga toroxal jigéen boobu so anytime su la neexee di nga ko toroxal so loolu moo tudda privilege loolu moo tax suñu waxee góor gender based violence foog nga indi si góor yi because góor ñi war nañoo understand ne man maa ngi toog ak suma nii de wante man war naa seet ak suma boppa because man suma góor yaa bi is toxic am na ñoo xam ne seen góor yaa is very toxic to them toxic to the society and then ñu si dee gën a soona mooy jigéen ñi so suñ toogee di wax nekku ne dañoo xaajale wax góor ak jigéen dañoo wax ñun ñett naka la ñoo def ba nga xam ne gender based violence soo ko wax nekkul ne xuloo bu sew diggante sa yow ak sa jabar rek si biir kër gi moo tax ñuy wax ñu ngi wax about njamu yi ñoo def sax maa ngi dem ba yokkasi extreme li fil ne njamu yi ñoo def sax ak façon yooyu noonu yu ñoo def yëpp si suñu aada di fil ne yow daan koo def pour rafetal sa boppa ñu ngi ko daan def pour objectify suñu boppa waaye dem nañ ba nga xam ne ñun miin nañ ko ba foog ne loolu noonu is acceptable way of defining ourselves waaye soo ko seetloo gender based violence ñu dem si xarafal jigéen loolu gender based violence ñu dem si jigéen ñi nga xam ne ñu ngi jaay seen boppa loolu gender based violence la soo ko xoolee in deeper because danga am the pull factors ak the push factors lan moo tax jigéen bi nekkul ne suñ mu demee di wax yooyu dañ dee wax ne jigéen bi am na beneen choice waaye dañ war a understand ne the choice ak consent dafa lifin torop dafa line bu ndaw la lan moo war a tax nañ understand things yi si suñ society bi rather than ñuy jël nit ñi di leen seppi di leen tànn di teg naan kii nii munoon naa def leneen soo gisee kii def ko lii soo gisee ñu réeg ko lii la soo gisee mu dem di jaay boppam lii la acceptuñ loolu ñun jigéeni Gambie fi mu nekkal romba nañ foofu ñu ngi bugg a egsi foo xam ne dañoo taxaw wax ne xam ngeen lan la kenn duñu definal suñ problème si ñun xam nañ suñ problème si ñun ñoo ko definal suñ bopp suñu waxee yii nii déglu leen ñu lu tax ñuy ko wax problème la moo tax ñuy ko wax te nangootuñ nag góor wala kenn di toog di ñu tànnal lan la ñoo define as suñ problems ak lan la ñoo define as problème yi society la nañ ko accept and then we see how to deal with it si gàttal loolu laa bëggoon a wax.
Thank you. Somebody left a message here. Is this live on Facebook? Yes, it is live on Facebook. I have some people asking for the link. Yeah, once we finish the meaty part, we would open the lines up and allow other people to join. Lima Defrek, I'm going to move on to Sarah and Mama Linger to briefly welcome them and also to allow them to react or respond to the helpline before we carry on. Sarah Tambe Bisimilala.
Thank you very much, F, for having me. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on wherever you are, to all the ladies. F, this helpline issue is a very exciting news to me. When I heard about it, it is very exciting because I feel like we should have these long time ago, because it seems every country is having these. It seems we are lacking behind. Well, I wouldn't go into details, but I would like to upload all the organizations and the individuals who have pushed these things forward, because we all know that gender issue and women's rights issue have been a very big issue in Gambia. And since our childhood time, we've seen other people who have been fighting, you know, to get to where we are today, because I feel like this is kind of like whatever efforts we've done, it seems at least we've gone one step.
Losing you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, it's better now. That's all right.
Yeah. What I was saying is that whatever efforts people have been doing a long time ago, it seems now people have the Gambia government or other organizations, they've been seeing the efforts we are doing. So I would like to say a big thank you to every individual and organization that came up with this idea and that pushed the idea forward to get to where we are today. I'm sorry, I need to introduce myself. I'm Sarata Jabi. co-founder, Care for Women and Girls, Damina. That's all about me. Thank you, F.
And you are founder of the Digest News, the platform that we are on now. So I think,
no,
thank you,
we are
Sarata.
talking about gender issue today. This is why I just said Care for Women and Girls. It's not about media.
Fair
so we
enough.
have to, I'm not going to talk about that. Yeah.
That's fine. Thank you very much. We're very lucky to have you on board. Mama Lingel, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello to all the panelists. You have a very dynamic panel here today, and I say hello to all the ladies, the really phenomenal Gambian ladies that, I am so fortunate to have met during this journey, and I continue to be inspired by all of you, by your strength and what you do. In terms of advocacy. And I always say that Gambia, the future is bright, because definitely we're going to make sure that it is for girls and for boys and for basically everybody here, but especially for the vulnerable groups, which are the women, of course. When we talk about gender-based violence, a lot of people would even tell you, as everybody was saying, oh, you always just talk about the women, but we have to talk about the women because they're the most affected by this. So it's only natural that we will talk about them. But we also talk about boys, especially now that we've seen a lot of violence as well from the boys. But we think, I, for one, believe that our advocacy should also extend to the boys, especially the teenage boys. You see a lot of them, the toxic attitude that they grow up with. A woman will be passing. I go to the beach to exercise most of the time. And you see these very young boys, very, very young, Chepe, wow, yo, nakamnak, wow, Sally. And I'm like, what, because they feel that that is the way that they should address women. So I think we need to start from that end as well, personally. I feel that we need to do a lot of work with the men as well, the boys especially, to try and get them to understand that you do not talk to women like that. Just because you see a woman on the streets, you do not disrespect a woman or talk to her any way that you feel like you should. And this all starts with us re-educating ourselves, re-educating the society that we live in. And we have a great role to play in this. The potential is there to really make it work, but I think it's going to take not just the women, because we speak about the women a lot, and we are trying to do so much in terms of advocating for women, but we forget that if we remedy the situation of the women and the men still continue with this toxic attitude, not a lot would change, because you would still have the cycle of violence towards women, the cycle of mental abuse. And we don't talk about mental abuse as well. That is something that is very important. A lot of women are suffering from mental abuse. They're not being physically abused, but they're being mentally abused. And we do not talk about that because, again, these women do not have the scars to prove what they're saying. There is no scar on them to prove that this is somebody that's suffering. But then what they're going through mentally is also a cause for concern. So I think these are some of the issues that we really need to look at when we talk about gender-based violence. And I hope that, moving forward, this discussion will also center around how do we bring the boys on board? How do we begin to desensitize or re-educate our boys to be able to understand from a young age that respect is something that you give and is something that you also get back as well. And that is, I think, fundamentally, that is where this starts. Because if you respect yourself, you respect a woman, then there are certain actions you would not do against a woman. And that is where I think we need to have more conversations on. But again, thank you to you and thank you to the panelists as well. The discussion has been very rich, very diverse, and I'm also learning from all of you here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you've raised some really important points, Mama, the engagement of men. And I think we mentioned that before. And I think my subsequent panel would be an all-men panel. So get ready. I'm seeing that Ali Manjang is watching and he is very keen to be part of this conversation. So I would definitely have some men on board as well, because as you said, we cannot end GBV or any sort of violence actually, or even empower women without engaging men. We are in this together. So what I'm going to do now is to move on to, Maimunasi has actually mentioned FGM as a form of GBV, domestic abuse. There are also other elements of GBV. The sexual violence is part of it. The the trafficking, as you said, the prostitution, child marriage. So all of these things I would like the panel to look into. But before we go into that, I'd like us to discuss the root cause of gender-based violence. I think Absa wants to come in. Absa? Thank you. You're making use of the chat button and it's making my job very easy here. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me come in. I think I want to emphasize a point that Mama brought up, which will connect to Maimuna's point as well, which is that the toxic masculinity that we see in our society that makes boys and men feel entitled to perpetuate violence against women or on women's bodies. She gave an example of people calling, like catcalling and all of that. And emphasize the point on re-education. I also think that there should be a lot of unlearning that needs to happen in our society because socially, we are conditioned to behave a certain way, to feel entitled, to act a certain way in the way we interact with other people who are different from us, whether that's men, women, and any other thing. But the reality in our society is men are conditioned to feel entitled that they can perpetuate violence. And for that reason, we need to do a lot of unlearning. And the reason that I'm emphasizing that it's because Maimuna talked about not being for he, for she. And I want to say there is an organization in the Gambia called He for She. And I know that what Maimuna is trying to say is that the entitlement and the toxicity that we see men perpetuate on women's female bodies is unacceptable, and she doesn't support that. But the organization He for She works to help do what Mama was trying to say, which is unlearning and re-educating men to understand that women have rights and they have ownership of their bodies, and nobody has any right or entitlement to perpetuate violence on women's bodies because they are women. And to add to that, I just want to raise, you talked about bringing up an all-men panel, and I'm a little critical of that just because I wonder why we're having an all-women panel and then we'll be having an all-men's panel coming afterwards. And I wonder what's informing that decision, and I understand that it's relevant. All people are part of this conversation, yet the structure in which we hold that conversation and how we set it up, I am curious about what's informing that decision.
Well, it's about development, and it's about changing perceptions and minds and engaging all stakeholders, really. Because as Mama said, and as we all believe, we cannot end, whether we like it or not, we cannot end GBV or any sort of violence without engaging everybody. The helpline aspect of things is it came about as a result of consolidation and working together of the civil society organizations and government. So of course, when this is a discussion that affects both men and women. So I think it is fair to actually have a platform where we would tell men that you are actually the perpetrators and this is how you need to behave towards women so that you can empower them, you can end violence, because I think they need to be in that conversation. You know, it's not a competition, as I said. It's not because I have an all-female panel, I have to have an all-male panel. No, it's about engagement and making sure that these men are also, they have a voice and they understand, not only the voice because they've always had the voice, but to understand what they are doing and how they need to bring up young boys as well, how they need to behave in society, because it feels like we need to tell them. They don't know. We need to tell them. So that's the rationale basically behind that conversation. Tufa, I think Tufa wants to come in. Tufa, come in.
Yeah, just quickly, two things. First is to say the fact that we're spending 5-15 minutes out of these conference to talk about men not being on the video in itself is the issue, right? It's just the basic little things that we're trying to talk about is when we set up a meeting to talk about SGBV, GBV, and a helpline, we have to spend 20 minutes trying to explain and justify why there's a man on the panel or not a man, when there are actual literal institutions where we see men 100% or 90%, and we are not questioning why there is not a woman there. We are not investing our time on the number of ratio of men to women, on actual institutions that affect our lives. But somehow it's a big deal because there's a meeting on a helpline. So that, I think, it's helpful for us to figure out and see where the problem is and why it's an issue, why we cannot even take space without taking half of that space, justifying why we have to have that space, if it makes sense. And secondly, as Mama also was saying and Absa touched on, is when we talk about misogyny and women's rights and feminism, in as much as we feminize the conversation, we're talking about women being affected. The issue surrounds all of us, and it affects our boys more sometimes often than it does the women, because here you are raising young boys who have not been given the opportunity to even grow, right? They are 12 years old, they're 13 years old, already feeling entitled enough to tell their auntie's age mate at the beachside, hey, chapenakam, and not feeling any guilt about it. Why is that? Those are effects and impacts of misogyny and patriarchy. Now, who is that affecting? Is it the woman she's talking to? Because I'm sure Mama, me, or anybody, you would walk away and go home. No one you stop there. But there you are leaving a young boy who doesn't know what it means to grow up to be a man, to be a gentleman, to be a man that understands.
Tufa, I don't want to cut you there, but just to chip in there, and that is more reason why we need to engage men.
True.
You know, there is a need to talk to these men, because some of them is the way you are brought up. And we, in a moment, we will go into talking about the root cause of GBV. We cannot isolate them in the conversation. So it's not about pleasing them or because, you know, it's a competition. No, it's about engaging them, making them understand what they're doing is wrong and how to change perceptions and behaviors, really. That is why we are having that dialogue. Yeah. Sorry, I had to just chip in there.
So no, it's okay. And all of these things can happen simultaneously, right? It's not in a vacuum. We can talk, we can have this platform and talk about these issues. So many organizations, Wheel and all these other ones, are also engaging boys and men, right? I think what is not right is to kind of justify why women are sitting down discussing issues that affect them. And of course we engage. In fact, we engage you 90% of the time than we do sitting together and talking, right? So if it's not an issue the other 90% of the time, the 10% should not also be an issue. But again, I think once we understand it affects everybody and we are raising young men that feel entitled, all these boys and men you have in your messenger who, if they text you, hello, hi, hello, 10 times and you don't reply, and they send you, yo, hamulosa bopasa, yo, there's just this huge sense of entitlement. Or you just video call somebody out of nowhere that you don't know, you never met them. It's all these small things that build up to the huge entitlement that a person feels, where they can raise their hand and beat somebody, where they can curse somebody, where they can emotionally disturb somebody. It's all these little things that we tend to ignore. And when boys do it, and some of those boys, you will surprise at the beach when they do that, their friends will say, yo, danga gore de, danga gore. Boromam, amud lifin, amud karawi naka.
Mustache.
You know, mustache, amud, you know, and then they're like, danga gore, right? But when a girl even hints at a man at the beach, let's say if it's vice versa, is whore and prostitute. So I think the conversation really needs to change. I do agree that our young generation, especially the boys, really need to unlearn, as Absa says, not to learn, but to unlearn a lot of stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I can see that Fatu, you want to comment, but I'd like to move the conversation a little bit further to move on from this man versus woman thing and go on to the root causes of GBV. You've touched on a few things there, a sense of entitlement, Tufa, and I think both Fatu Balde and Maimuna C and Absa have touched on the unlearning, so the social norms. So I want us to look at these things. Mineka nying cause nying tajirinte ya kabuke wolkan katamu sulkan. Lan moy root cause be gender-based violence. What are the root causes of it? Apart from the entitlement, then look at a little bit on the social norms and how a child is brought up from a young age, how they learn that, you know, boys are meant to be strong, girls are meant to be weak, and all of those things. That's what I want us to focus on in these few minutes. So I'm going to open up the floor. This is an open question to anyone. Maimuna, if you want to comment, or Fatou Balde, I saw that you wanted to comment. If you want to talk to us about the causes. Am I frozen? Can
I come in?
Oh, you are here. Yeah. Yeah. Go on.
Yes. I think within the Gambian society, similar to many other societies, is the fact that we have a very patriarchal society that teaches boys from a very early age. You know, a lot of these things we have touched on through the conversation, so I won't be wasting a lot of time on it. But I think we have a society where from a very early age, from the moment a child is born, I like to go back from the ngente, where we say nañ rey ñaari xar pour góor bi doom bu góor bi nañ rey benn xar pour doom bu jigéen bi, where we are told ne do am biir soo biiree biir doom bu góor moo gën a métti biir doom bu jigéen, o matu doom bu góor moo gën a métti matu doom bu jigéen. We, even before those children are born, we are already discriminating. So it starts from that stage, and this continues throughout the lifespan of both boys and girls. From xale yooyu suñ juddoo, you go jigéen bi yow demal raxas bool, demal tooga, boy bàyyi ko mu dem play football, moom na jël bukam mi, you know, or boy bi dafa war a nekk doctor, dafa war a nekk. We need to look at, when we talk about violence against women, when we talk about gender-based violence, we need to look at it from the household level, because that's where it all starts. And this is what continues at the community level. Nga ñëw nga fekk ci community bi, all the saying at the community, ñu gën a am a say, ñu gën a am a word at the community are men. And you find that very same thing at institutions. So then institutionalize violence from the household to the community to the policy level. In the Gambia, violence against women, gender-based violence, it's everywhere. So swing patriarchal society is a very big contributing factor. Low coupled with the fact that we have a very low level of education. Right now we do
patriarchy mooy lan mun nga wax nit ñi patriarchy.
Wow, mooy xaw ma naka laa ko define si olof na.
Society boo xam ne góor yi ñoo rule, the men rule the world. They say it like that, don't they?
Yes. Góor yi ñoo am the decision, ñoom ñooy decide lan mooy happen. Te loolu dafa touch on many things. So for instance, when we talk about inheritance, this is a topic that a lot of people feel uncomfortable with, because it's in society, the moment you talk about inheritance, everybody relates it to religion, you know, issues around that. So gender, I was talking about education, the fact that we have a low level of education, especially among the older generation. But even now, Soko apply it. We talk about having gender parity. We talk about having more women at more girls being enrolled now. At primary level, more girls are getting enrolled. Girls are getting enrolled. But follow the trend of those girls. How many of those girls complete primary school? How many of those girls continue to college and to university? Those are all discriminations. And unless we look at those root causes, you start at that bottom, like the previous speakers have said. You unlearn those behaviors. You have norms. You have normalize. I like the example that Mama gave at the beach. You know, we have normal. In fact, if you talk to a lot of women and boys, they don't see that as violence. They don't see that it's a discrimination, because they normalize you. Purunga them new cat caller or new whistle at you or call you names. That is so normalized in our society. You will so women, they will tell you do violence idea but that is violence. And as Tufa said, that's where the boys start from. We need to look within our society, within our households. As a household, what are we doing? How are we perpetuating violence against women or discrimination of women and girls from the household level, so we can train our young boys and also our young girls, so that they know what rights are, what violence is from a very early age.
Thank you, Fatu. I think that's a good overview of the courses. Is there anyone else who want to add anything? Mina, we haven't heard from you. Tufa, go on.
Yeah, so just a little bit, like to dive a bit in Wolof with what Fatou Balde has been trying to say in regards to what patriarchy is. I think in Wolof and a bit of Mandinka that sums it up. Is to say, lum nekk di wax mooy te di nga dégg feminist yu bari Gambia, waaw am nañ ay feminist dinañ wax patriarchy every time. So lum firi mooy dëkka buñ dëkka mooy Gambia, Sénégal ak lu ko wóor léegoo léegi parce que dañ niroo aada ak cosaan mooy dañ nekk nit yoo xam ne ak jamaa boo xam ne nu ñuy doxalee suñuy affaire dafa góore comme ni ngay waxee da nga am buur bu góor am buur bu jigéen nu ñuy doxalee suñ luwaay ba nu ñuy tuddee ay bagage ay affaire yoo xam ne dañ leen téye loo xam ne dafa am soxla dañ koy jëlee si palaas yi gisi góor duñ ko dee jëlee si gis-gisi jigéen si gisini jigéen maanaam waaw su ñëwee si lu am soxla su ñëwee suñu dëkkuwaay nu ñoo dëkkee si aada ak cosaan yëpp si gis-gisi góor la maanaam suñuy def ay décision suñuy wax loi bi nii la war a mel aada bi nii la moo doxee cosaan bi nii la mu war a mel yëpp si gis-gis góor la maanaam lu neex jigéen bi lu dox si lu wérgu yaram jigéen bi si xalaatam xelam ak nituwaayam parce que jigéen niti boppam la duñ ko dee xoolee gis-gis jigéen gis-gis góor la loolu la patriarchy mean soo déggee nit mu ne dañ dëkk si dëkki patriarchy maanaam dañ dëkk si dëkk boo xam ne gis-gis bi ak ni ñuy doxalee affaire yi yëpp si gis-gisi góor la Fatou Balde bi min fokan no manikan kan oto ka sutiyandi musu jamal nimbe diamla astuma musol minka kelo ke musol la lodu lala ani dunyo kan milka wakele e kamo e kafu patriarchy bake angale kan oto mimu woti wala mu na ado na chosano anin dimba yambe milukono na jerinya anin ka kuol tamandi nyamen akabo kewala jero leto akabo dulalto ay kewolo na fa nyamen bayri milu sita kata mama ya mumumoliya mil sita yo kuol londi wa ado ni wo chosanol jamai kono munun kewalleti iman sidula dinu musola sa ni be nyin kuol fakang ibe nyin kuol londi kan musola la jerinya buka lafano akuoto wala patriarchy in a nutshell.
Abaraka baki ngamere yo wasani andire sarata fanang lafta peng adla wakale sarata.
Okay, just to add on what Fatou and Afsa, Mama and Tuf, all the speakers anyway.
Sarata fumone manika kawal. Mana liye manika domanding la fa kuol kono.
Okay. Okay, ye minfo Mama ye minfo sa start ni bi Mama ye minfo. Comme dindingolu yetara bichoto yetambila fa yaje kambandingo be ikumandila ya understand na kumadol fole. Nte amira efnia jube nimu collective responsibility because first of all they left their parents, both parents at home. You understand? But ite be jumale jela ko abakata dingole nyinin bichoto. They will not look for them because of they are boys. Boys solo miti la haji tiji. Ibama nyol la haji tiji, fama nyol la haji tiji. Natara din sunkuto lam hali Sunday bit fango. When they go for Sunday bit, like for instance, after 2-3 hours, most of the parents, especially the moms, they will start looking for them. But coming back to Fatou Yeminfo, Fat Balde, ako come like Nikono Bela, it can start to discriminate the baby yet before the baby will be born. Ni ajube fango Fatou, just to add on that, ni ko dinke wayo le soto. Saji fula fani ko dimusolam saji killing bari Fatou jandin kulliyo be futala woto follow ni wuluta follow ni e kulliyo ni ya kankula ni momin ko kare wuluta e muna soto ni ko ay ko ay dinke wala soto bari mu jatolati bari ko kare mu jatolati de dinke way wala soto be teata bakale den e duwa ni ko ay dimuso soto yo alama de na no balu tonya duwaning is the most important thing here when we talk about prayers to pray for the baby. The prayer is the most important thing, but expression of mindi, expression mindi, is completely different. So ni muso ni fango ni aju be fango at our family level. ni yaji be muso mi yalon ko aka dinke wol damman so always ka ko he kari wo kayla muso mu jatole as if ni muso is the person giving herself a baby boy bi yalon ko wo ka dim muso le soto mo ka wo consider as a superwoman. So sometimes again lack of understanding mukuleti mi yalon ko ay mul batandi bakel. When I talk about lack of understanding, I mean here within ourselves, women ourselves. For instance, the person is going through domestic abuse, but if you ask us, he will say it's normal. So lack of understanding, adding awareness, because how can someone be going through a domestic abuse? The person, if you ask her, she will say this is normal. Yeah, so it's normal to do anything to me. And in media, they wouldn't know they are right. Even if you want to advise them, this is your right, and decision making within the family. Honey, I better it's all right because he is the head of the family. Yes, he is the head of the family, but you as the woman, you are the neck of the family. And wherever the neck turns, that's where the head will turn. So may I do in another way around. When we call our men the head of the family, the neck always, wherever the neck turns, that's where the head will turn. So it's vice versa.
The neck holds the head, yeah?
Exactly. So
and then that makes us to be even more powerful, doesn't it?
Exactly. But then the woman would not realize that she would not know how powerful she is in the family because of the lack of understanding of her own right. And then Tufa was saying, when they call you names, they will say, their colleague will say, Yo, denga gore. Yeah, because at that early age, they will feel like they are gore. Then gore, parce que lo len ham, lo len gis, parce que depuis bu ñeké xalé, dañ la dé wax né dara su la joté sa so joyé sa ñu né bul joy yow goor du dé joy. When the person, the boy himself is going through pain, they will say, Kana kumbo, no, kana kumbo, yo goor nga. Why if it is a girl, they will say, yeah, ni dé do. So you see? So these are some of the things me along control fangol de nyanta sila nga ko ñu jubé, especially musol fangol especially. Yeah, okay, someone want to come in. Okay.
I'm just aware of the time. We've only got 20 minutes, and basically we've only just looked at two or three questions. And I know, yeah. So I just have to move the conversation forward a little bit. So I know that you've touched on so many different aspects of the causes of GBV, and then you've raised some really important points. Which is the social norms, the gender roles, because that's what you are telling me right now. Inequality and discrimination from the family level going up, to government level. So and that also involves the policies and legislations that government creates or implement. So I think that issue is exhausted. I'm going to allow Ndejobat, and Ndejobat has just joined the panel to share some few words, and then we will look at now the different elements of GBV. So the rape, the FGM, the domestic abuse. So Ndejobat, welcome. Nde, are you here? You can see.
Yeah, Father, I'm in. I'm just juggling. That's why I'm not on camera, juggling with the kids.
That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say hello to everybody, and I'm so proud listening. I mean, seeing young ladies, young women, really disrupting the whole system. And when I say disrupting it, meaning that the fact that men are even scared to see all women panel, that is amazing, because that
they are threatened. They are very threatened by
exactly.
it.
So when we talk about gender-based violence, that is where you should even start already, because it's like it's unacceptable to have an all-women panel. It's like it's unacceptable for women to sit down and talk about their issues. It's like it's unacceptable for women to sit down and find solutions on issues that affect and dear into their heart. That is gender-based violence. That is the start of the issue. That is the start of the discussion, because we've been seeing consistently on all the media platforms, all men political analyst. Which of the media houses do you see having political analysis of the situation of the problems in the Gambia that affect all of us, men, women? Do you see women on those platforms? Do you see them? Do you see when it comes to issues that affect our people? These are some of these issues, but nobody complain about that because it's the norm. We all accept it's okay to have an all-men platform. It is okay to have men run our affairs. Is it even okay to have women issues and it's an all-men platform? And that also is gender-based violence. Because you don't need to beat somebody physically. You don't need to slap somebody. You don't need to even deny somebody its right. But the fact that issues that affect us are being discussed and we are not present is a problem. So I think these are issues we should look at. And I listened thoroughly to all of you, and I'm happy that we are going to unpack this whole issue in terms of, well, from the home, from the boys. I've heard a lot of discussion from the boys, from the young people, from these kids that what Tufa, I think, Mama, and all of you people have raised about. There are some young people who will send you messages on Facebook, on Messenger, and sometimes I ask you, do you know how old I am? I can be your mother. I said, that's not how you, that's not doing a chase again. You know, you don't do that. You have to approach it properly. You have to do it nice. They don't even know how to approach women because they feel that they own it. They have the ownership. They have the right. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how educated you are. It doesn't matter your position. You are just a woman. That is
an object, yeah,
yeah.
to use.
So, yeah. So these are the things we need to look at. And as I always said also, we have to be able to liberate ourselves to be able to liberate anybody else. Mm-hmm. And these conversations are very important for us to have it among ourselves. We ourselves need to understand it because we've been so domesticated. We've been so brought up as custodians of a lot of things we don't even understand ourselves. Sometimes we do things that are so much against ourselves that we don't realize. And these conversations are important to unpack, to understand even what are we talking about? What are we fighting for? Why do we have to change this situation? Why do we have to have this? Yes, I know, I mean, I had Absa clarifying the issue of he for she, and also I think Fatuba, they also went into it. Very important, very fantastic. But as I said, you cannot liberate anybody if you are not liberated. We cannot change men when we ourselves as women cannot even fight for our own issues or articulate these situations. And you see it on Facebook. These women, HIV/AIDS women, who were there testifying the insult they were getting. I was shocked because if it's not anything, just the human aspect of it, but they were being blamed. We've seen men testify with all kinds of things, but there was sympathy towards them. So these are issues we need to take on, and just not to drag you people back to the issues. I'm really impressed, especially the intergenerational speakers here, young women who, of course, have most of them have been following through in the Facebook, and the bravery, because you have to be brave. As I said, if you are talking about feminism, if you are talking about disrupting patriarchy, you are going into a lion's den. Yeah. And we all know when you are going to a lion's den what that means. And that is how the reality is for us. And we have to also protect each other. We have to protect the younger generation. We have to be there to support, because we need the safe space. And this is the safe space we need to be able to fight. If we don't have it, then we will be consumed individually. We will be consumed, we will disappear, we will be destroyed individually. It doesn't matter because we have a common. Men have solidarity. And I was glad that some of the ladies were also talking about the cases of Lamin Bojang is a classic case. Didn't we have abuse of young women on Facebook and they were defending them? And they were even defending the perpetrator? Now Lamin Bojang came out, everybody is defending. In fact, the saddest thing, I saw young men who call themselves progressive. I saw them giving solidarity to men who have been accused of abuse. And that is sad and it's scary. So we have to be very vigilant as women. We have to be very open-minded. We have to look around our surrounding, because we have to build allies, and they have to be the right allies. That's what I just want to ask. And sorry that I couldn't come fully into the program due to this holiday and all this juggling as usual as mothers. You always have to juggle with many, many things.
Yeah.
And that's the reality.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nday. I think it's always an inspiration. You've always been full of, you are full of wisdom, basically. We always learn something from you every time you engage. So thank you. We all look up to you. And what I'm gonna do, I'm aware of the time. I'm really panicking right now. I don't know how you all are doing with time, my panelists, but I do want us to go into the individual violence categories on the GBV. I want to look at rape as a own subject, because these are they're all very broad, and I'm aware that we cannot exhaust the topics today, but I do want us to touch a little bit on each aspect of yes, Mama.
Can I just interrupt there? Because I think, I know you're panicking with the time, but I think if we need to come back next Saturday and the Saturday after that and the Saturday after that and have these discussions, that's what we need to do.
Right.
And really just talk about these things. But I think, I mean, every time Deja Bata speaks, she knows I'm her biggest fan. Every time she speaks, I'm just nodding my head, because this is a woman, full of knowledge and really so giving to all of us, that she mentored throughout the years that we've been in the struggle, etc. And she spoke about something very important: the way that men will show solidarity towards each other, and the way that us women will even gang up against other women and these men and be insulting women. That's an important point that we need to also speak about and talk about, because like you said, she gave a classic example, and a lot of people have spoken about this. When women came out saying we were raped.
The network is unstable, I think, Mama. If you could go over to what you've just said, I think I missed that part.
Okay. Okay. I said, when we talk about rape, when girls come out to talk about rape, everybody jumps on them, including women. Men, we expect that, because some of them are perpetrators, some of them are actually rapists, so we understand that. But to actually get women as well coming out and saying, I don't believe you, you were not a virgin, so you could not have been raped, and really bringing issues and jumping on these women and really, dehumanizing them further. This is the reason why victims of rape, victims of even domestic violence, they do not come out and speak about these things because of the backlash against them. And I think what they said is very important. We need to have a safe place around these issues where we can discuss it and support these women and girls and boys as well, because there are a lot of boys as well that are being raped, and they will not talk about it because everybody. And I even feel that when even men come out and say, I've been raped, I was castrated in prison, the sympathy that they get, and when women come out and say, I've been raped and this is what happened to me, the sympathy that they get is completely different. And I think this is a major cause of violence against women is rape. So we have to be able to talk about these issues and try to be able to even educate women, our own women, to understand. I had a lot of women block me from Facebook because I stood up and said, these girls came out and said they were raped. 6, 7 girls cannot be wrong. And other cases as well that were reported at the police before cannot be wrong. And what happened? These people came after me with all kinds of smear campaign and everything. And women, our fellow women, were some of the people that were helping them, perpetrate these kind of abuses, just because I stood up and said, I believe these girls and I'm going to stand and fight with them. So, this is where we have a problem, because how many other people would like to suffer the same abuse that these girls suffered, the same abuse that I suffered and somebody suffered, just because we stood up and said, this needs to stop. So really, I think we need to have these conversations. We need to be able to understand that if we continue to dehumanize women, if we continue to support men to dehumanize women, what we're doing is creating a society that will be very unsafe for our girls. And we really, and I want the men to also understand that they have mothers, they have sisters, they have kids themselves. And those children, those girls are going to grow up in a society where men feel entitled enough to do anything to them and then say, you know what, it's all your fault because you wore a short skirt, or because you were looking a certain way, or because you're not a virgin, or whatever. These are things that we need to discuss. And I think, the first thing we need to do as women is understand ourselves that if we do not support these women, we ourselves, our kids will suffer the same fate that these women or these girls are suffering. So we need to be able to, stand up and say, if you abuse, and this is why people say I'm very extreme, because me, if you go after a woman, I come after you. And people see it as, oh no, she's this, she's that. And I've gone through, everybody tells me it's not even worth you getting all these insults and everything just because you're standing for these girls. And I said, when I look at these girls, I don't see them. I see my daughter. I see my friend's daughter. I see people that are close to me, my nieces that are going to maybe go through this one day. And if I don't stand up today and be counted, when those people are going through that as well, maybe there'll be nobody left to stand up and be counted.
Yeah.
So definitely we need to have a discussion around this and really try and see how we can remedy some of these situations. But our girls are getting raped and they're quiet about it. Our girls are getting, beaten up at homes, in their marital homes, and they're quiet, all because our society has created this safe space for the men to be able to have this support and solidarity. And we haven't been able to create this safe space or support for the girls and the women to be able to support them the same way and provide them with the same support to be able to get over these things and talk about it. So, Tufa, like I said, I salute this young lady. She's brave beyond belief. And, she continues to fight. She continues to stand up and be counted. And these are the sort of women that we all need to rally behind and support and push and, fight back when people go after them. We have to do that.
I hear you. I mean,
Thank you.
I hear you. And thank you so much to women like you. I mean, again, it's women like you that keep some of us alive, that keep some of us sane and able to do what we do. It's not in a vacuum. And I think it's a bitter pill to swallow to know women stands, especially a lot of women stands when it comes to rape issues. But I think it also stems from a deeper place of these women wanting to conform to what they know. Is the conversation around white women in America, in North America, trying to uphold racism and not and enjoy their privilege of being white women, even though there is a lot of sexism and patriarchy affecting them, but they will defend it. And from my experience, there's an intergenerational gap. Most of the women that refuse to accept and listen to survivors and victims are women who are older. They're in their older ages a little bit. And the idea is these are women that are also comfortable within this patriarchy. They have adopted it. They have upheld these institutions. It's their comfort zone. They're comfortable in it. But also some of these women have had experiences like this in their life, and they have convinced themselves that it is okay, that this is normal. So when another woman comes out to confront that same system, they feel threatened. They feel like, no, you want fee, you accept lini, ngiri yala. Do not disrupt these spaces. And most of these women, they get their privilege and benefit from being attached to these powerful men, right? Within the system of class and kan mo opakan class, ñoom seen class ba mu ngi tane dan Tufa and benen jangha bi ak benen jigen bi ci village bi, because they are associated with Minister Kari, they're associated with powerful Kari, they're associated with this men. In a way, it gives them a platform, it gives them a little bit of you're part of this power structure. So when a woman comes out and say this powerful man or this man did this to me, they don't see it as a threat against the man. That's why they're reacting the way they're doing. They're reacting because they see it as a threat to their entire understanding of what their position is as a woman. You're threatening their status quo, like, oh, we're comfortable in this chair, do not sift it. But also it just comes from a place of, I can never do this. There are women who criticize survivors because they know aduna bisinyo ebemu tukiwat. They will never ever be able to open their mouth and talk about the harm that has been done to their body. So how dare you have the audacity to do that? How dare you? Where do you, don't do that. If I can't do it, You can't do it. We all keep quiet. So it comes from a lot of different places. But I think what is hardest for survivors and all those girls, I can tell you, is knowing that another woman is sitting down there and setting up they're committing their lives to defending, a story they do not know, a man they do not know, and they will do anything to portray that woman as something else because they want to be the good woman, the conforming woman, the perfect woman for the perfect society. And these other women are the outcasts. They're the bad ones. They're the prostitutes. They're the ones who don't listen to their husbands. They're the ones that we need to control. And so we can all be okay. But we are grateful to the women that continue to say, hey, to the women who take the insults they did not have to take, right? But they take it because, directly or indirectly, you're still being insulted. So why not stand for what you believe in and take the insults? But yes, there's a bigger conversation. And I think myself, there's so many men that will get back to me and say, oh, jigéen bisa gumudla. And it's like a weapon thing, and you kind of hold back a little bit because you're like, okay, how do I navigate this now? But again, we can have so many weeks of these conversations, Fatu, but we will let you walk within your timeline for today.
Yeah. Thank you, Tufa. You are always an inspiration as well. And as Mama said, we are always behind young people like yourselves. I think they when I reached out today, she recommended young people like Mina and Absa, because I didn't even know about those two young ladies. And it's good that we're connecting and we're talking from different generations. Is really important. We've got some comments here and people are saying that they want me to carry on this conversation. So I think we would not finish today. Obviously, this might take maybe another couple of weeks because I've got like 10 different questions on my list here. Fatou Balde wants to go because of baby. So we'll allow Fatou Balde to say her last words before leaving us, and then we will carry on. And I think Maimuna C also wants to say something. Fatou. Ananga Fatou Balde, are you gone? Okay, Fatou, oh dear, that's a shame. Okay, I'm gonna allow Maimuna C.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to actually very, very good contributions there from all the panelists. I'm so excited about this. And like they said, the intergenerational conversation that we are having now is something that we have not had before. And like Mama and everyone else and Tufa has said, Fatou, I think if we need to come here again, then we have to do it. Because what we usually do is we start these discussions and we do not exhaust it, and then we move on to something else. Yeah. And I think something like this should be continued. Like Tufa was saying, the thing that we have to watch out for each other, how do we change this? The narratives, what is rape in our culture? Like, we are all bystanders. I look at myself, like the past week, they mentioned how the victims of HIV were being victimized, how they were being insulted. And it is the same week that we have Lamin Bojan, the issue of Lamin Bojan coming up. And then you have even young women changing their profile pictures in solidarity with Lamin Bojan.
Yeah.
Because everyone believes in the story. And the woman that has been raped, when Tufa, for example, came with her narration, what you saw was, do we have to believe her or don't we believe her? And it was coming from women themselves. There was nothing like, do we believe in Lamin Bojan or not? I look at this is called bandicam or whatever they are called. The person in the camera is you. This is caught on camera, and yet still we are saying, do we believe him? We are in solidarity with you. And for a woman that has undergone rape and every other kind of sexual assault, we have to spend weeks to say, okay, justify. Negi go time be langa fa uti, langa solon, like Mama said, that boy at the beach trying to hit at you, knowing that you can be her mom. It happens to all of us on Facebook. They come naked. It's because they don't even know how to approach women. They've not been trained on how to approach women. And all these things like the comfort zones that Tufa is talking about do not just exist in our society, but they exist in social media. And my problem is the Gambian Facebook. I have a problem with the Gambian Facebook. How we women go to the extreme to defend men.
Yeah.
And when we come to gender issues, we are talking now. It's just we need action. We should not just be talking. How we women go to the length, extent to justify, to go beyond, to go out of of ourselves to defend men. And then why do we do that? Because you think that when you defend this man, then you are more popular on Facebook. It's about popularity, let's be honest.
Yeah.
You are in the books of this man, and that makes you popular. I've always told them that I would rather be unpopular. Let me stick with Aisha, let me stick with Ndey, let me stick with Fatu, because I know that they are women and they believe in the cause, and then I have them, you know, no matter what happens, I have these people. Instead of wanting to be attractive to men or be popular on Facebook, how many likes you get, and it is gone to that. It has trickled down to that, whether we like it or not. That is the issue. We have this caboodles on Facebook, and when you talk about gender issues, and you know that it's unpopular, Fatu, you just watch who you tag. You know exactly who you tag when you talk about gender issues.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be the case.
It's sad. Yeah.
We should go beyond digital and social media as well. Because all these things we are talking about are on social media. We have the same audience. If you look at your audience now, it should be the same audience. It's sponsored and all these men that come and support us all the time. But how do we reach out to these men that we cannot reach on Facebook? Is it through organizations? How do we do them? Do it at the grassroots level, because it needs to start from the home. When I teach my child, I'm teaching my child the best way to how do you talk to a woman. When a woman says no, it's no. What is rape actually?
Yeah.
When your girlfriend says no, it's no. You force yourself on your girlfriend, it's rape.
Yeah.
That is just it. We do not have to compromise anymore. Nakala language binyawe, non la buñ ko helat. Sometimes if we want to define this in our local language, it becomes so nasty.
Yeah.
And then we try
you struggle to find the right words, don't you?
We do not have definitions for them. And then we try to find, even patriarchy, we have problem defining what patriarchy is. And we know what it is. But for you to sit down and tell somebody that this is patriarchy is very difficult. So we have to find a definition for these things, use our local languages, and then no matter how brutal it is, we go beyond maslahati. Maslaha culture and then we go beyond that and just say it how it is. Ne so for say sa bop sako go jigen nonu danga danu si ko non la rek amul ne ma def si mom ñeneen ta transu or ma def si mom, but us as women, as long as that ñeneen ta transu is paid on us, then you are being owned.
Yeah.
And these are just some of the root causes when we talk about how do we all these causes of these things about what are the root causes of gender-based violence. These are the root causes. This thing like throwing like a girl and then boys do not cry. Yeah. And most of these boys do not cry leads to toxic masculinity. And most of these men are even emotionally unstable, physically, psychologically. And they go on, if you have been abused, there is research that if you have been abused, you continue abusing others.
I'm sorry to cut you short. I'm going to ask you to hold on to that thought for a moment and allow Fatu Balde to just say her last words and Mama Lingen, because I think they want to go now. So we can carry on because you are here on the panel, aren't you?
Yeah, you get me here today.
Sorry, yeah. So let's just allow them. Sorry about that. Just allow Fatu Balde just to say her last words and Mama Lingen, and then we'll allow you to finish up before I open the line, because I'm getting some phone calls from Gambia right now. So Fatu will allow you to just say a few words before you leave. You're on mute, Fatu. You're on mute.
Thank you, Fatu, again, for such a wonderful conversation. I think we will all agree that there is a need to have more of this. And I think this, we can use this for the men that are asking to be given spaces. I think this just shows how much we need this sort of space so that we can come and talk about us, so that we can come and talk about the issues that actually affect us. I can assure you one thing, Fatu, if you organize an all-male panel, they will not even allow you to speak. This is why we need a space where us women can sit and speak about issues that affect us. But I just wanted to, I know a lot of us, almost everyone here has mentioned the issues around when we talk about violence against women, or when a victims comes out, the backlash they face, especially from women. I just want to go back a step earlier you asked about the root causes. And I think this fits in perfectly, because the reason why women don't believe women, the reason why women question whether women are telling the truth or join the male fold, it's because of the same patriarchal society. That's the way that the society trains us, that we should be silent, that we should fight each other instead of being each other the sisters keepers. We fight each other. But this is as a result of the way the norms, the same reasons why violence is being perpetuated on women. Those are the exact same reasons why women are coming out, and instead of defending victims, are questioning. But that's because that's the way society constructs violence. That's the way society trains Gambian women to think. So again, this all just goes back to the need for us to have these conversations, to change that narrative, to change the whole concept, the way that gender-based violence is conceptualized in our society. We need to go back and dismantle all those beliefs, dismantle those norms, and that will give us a way forward. I just wanted to take this opportunity again to say thank you for inviting me. I wish I could stay for a bit longer, but I have a little baby that is waiting for me, so I have to go now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time and contribution, Fatima. I think you are always, as I said to Tufa, you are also another inspiration, and you're doing very good job in Gambia. And we just want to say thank you and keep doing what you do. We would carry on this conversation. I think I'll try and be here next week. And if you all can make it, we can keep talking about issues, because as I said, the list is long and the issues are broad. We cannot exhaust them. So thank you very much. Yes, it's not enough. Definitely not. Definitely not. Thank you for your time, and peace to baby.
Thank you to everyone.
Yes. Take care. Bye bye. I'll move on to Mama Linger now. Mama, I think you also want to go. If you can share your final thoughts.
Yes, I think you can hear the rain. It's raining very heavily in Gambia. And really, I have also a few commitments that I committed myself to. As I said, when you invited me, that I couldn't stay the whole time, but definitely this is something I'm very passionate about. And I would love to, of course, continue the conversation. And I hope that we will continue to have this conversation. Like Fatih said, we need this space. It's not about an all-female panel. It's about women coming together to discuss women's issues. And sometimes, we don't need to have an excuse to be able to do that. Conslate raised a very important question. How do we engage the Ministry for Women's Affairs to be able to reach the grassroots? I think the helpline, the Women's Helpline, is one of the tools that we can use, but we also need to go deeper in terms of advocacy, in terms of taking it to the grassroots and having these discussions at the grassroots. And it's not going to be, again, it's not going to be popular, it's not going to be pretty, it's not going to be the sexiest thing to talk about, but I think it's something that we need to do, to talk about, and it's something that we need to discuss with other women at other levels to be able to really get them to understand that some of the things that are going on is not normal, it's not right, and really as a woman, you also have your own rights, and you need to feel safe and secure, whether you're in a marriage or in a relationship or whatever it might be. But I think moving forward, let's continue to have these conversations. Let's continue to engage the men. And I think, it's very important for us to do that. I've seen a lot of foundations, a lot of things coming up addressing boys, but I think we need to do more in terms of engaging the men, the boys especially, for them not to grow up with these entitled concepts that they have about themselves, about society and how society views them. I think if we lift everybody up together, we will build a stronger society than if we uplift the girls and leave the boys behind, or if we uplift the boys and we have a society where boys are valued more than girls, and then that also creates these problems that we're talking about. So thank you to all of you for having me today. Lights have gone off now in Gambia, as you can see.
Oh dear.
Now so I better go before my internet goes off as well. Yes, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the conversation, and I will be listening, in the background whilst I also go and run a few errands quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was really good to have you, Mama, and thank you very much for your contribution. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna allow, I think Mina, you want to go as well, isn't it, Mina? Are you starting work as well, Mina?
Yes, actually, I've been here since morning. So
Yes, yes. So we'll allow
yeah.
you to say your final words as well before I open the line up for the callers.
Yeah, initially, I'm sorry that I've been going in and out of the video because I had to multitask. And few things I just wanted to add on before I get into the topic that was meant to talk about is the sense of entitlement that a lot of the panelists were talking about. I feel this is a very like it's a main issue in our Gambian community because a lot of men feel this way. Not in some of them. Someone has mentioned that a lot of them feel that way because of their masculinity, but also there is this subconscious behavior among our men that think that like when they say certain things to you in a condescending or in a more patronizing way, they feel like you're supposed to appreciate it. Like an example that Mama Linger gave, like when she went to the beach for to jog. So to some people, they may think that that was a compliment to her when it was not, because it's first of all it's disrespectful and it's not supposed to be patronizing towards her, and it's a violation, really. It's a harassment, and that's just what I wanted to add on that sense of entitlement that a lot of people have. And I'll get to talk about child marriage and child or forced marriage. It's also another form of gender-based violence, and this is commonly or predominantly it happens among women or girls, I would say. And this usually involves the marriage of an underage child or marrying of someone without their consent, because according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, everyone has the right to consent for every relationship that they might be getting into. And to force them into it, or being it a child or an adult, would be a violation on their human rights. And in the Gambia, we do have a lot of factors that normally get people into to marry off their children, either because it's cultural, it's become like it's a cultural thing, and some people do it for the idea that it brings honor to their family, and more so sometimes it's about lack of education on awareness. But then what we need to understand is that child marriage, for instance, like in the Gambia at the moment, the Children's Act does not support it. The Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which is the CEDAW, does not also promotes the protection and the protection of children from abuse and violation. And these are all frameworks that are present in the Gambia that protects women and children. And the fact that the Network Against Gender-Based Violence now have a domestic helpline where one can call in to report their concerns, I think it's very important for us to make very good use of it. And whereas sometimes families, especially that are unaware of where they may seek help and where they can get assistance in terms of what is happening to their family, because a lot of the times, men being the head of the family, they have a lot of say in what happens to their children. It does not necessarily mean that women or their mothers do not agree to that fact, but then they do not know where to turn back. They do not know how to challenge the situation. So I think a lot of sensitization and awareness needs to be created, especially in the up countries, to make them to make them understand like where help may be available. And such organizations in the Gambia vital organizations in the Gambia, like the Child Protection Alliance, the UNFPA, the Network Against Gender-Based Violence, Think Young Women. These are all organizations that are very responsive when it comes to issues like that. And it's very important that if we make good use of the hotline, whenever someone calls in and make a report of their actions, because a lot of the times, to be honest, my worry in Gambia is privacy and data management. So to breach someone's data, we don't put a lot of respect on people's data. So someone can easily break your confidential information. And this is something that I would encourage or urge the helpline, the domestic helpline, to take into action. Because for me to feel confident enough to come to you and explain my problems, some things that are very personal to me that I wouldn't want anyone to be aware of. So if I come to you, I would want to believe that that information is safe with you, and there would not be any breach of information, any breach of confidentiality. So this is one of my main concerns when I had that the domestic helpline was introduced. Although while we still acknowledge the fact that it's a very, very good and positive initiative, we must also encourage and also remind the people that are responsible to not forget to put these factors in place that would make people, victims and people, to feel protected and confident that their information is safe with them, because it further helps with their healing, it helps with their recovery in whatever that they might be going through. And this in turn will encourage other people to come forward. And because we live in a society where like we don't talk about these issues. So once we have somewhere that we can open up to, and it would be a therapeutic conversation if we know that like it's going to be, our information is going to be protected and we're going to get the help that we need and justice is going to prevail. So I think that's one of the things that I wanted to discuss. I wish I could stay longer and talk about this more, but I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Yeah, I want to say thank you very much for inviting
Thank
me.
you. Thank you very much, Mina. I think one of the things also maybe that it's worth mentioning is the child helpline as well. I think that was launched this week. I think I'm not sure about the number. It's got a 9. I think it's 199 or 119. I don't want to share it right now because I'm not sure, but I'll put it on my Facebook. It has been launched, the child helpline. So there is a GBV helpline and a child line as well. So where young people can call. But you've raised some really important point about data protection, privacy, and how information is managed, because people need to be confident as well before they share their information. So this is why it's important to have young people like you to join in these type of conversations, because you see it from a different perspective as well. So we thank you very much for your time and your contribution, and we hope that we can have you again next week. Well, I'll reach out to you anyway, but we really appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I don't know whether thank you. I don't know whether is any other person leaving, because I want to open up the line for few. I have Fatu Jan on the line and Aliu Manjang wants to contribute. Some people have questions. I think I'm not going to go forward with what I have on here on paper. We would continue the discussion. I just want to open up the lines, if that's okay with the panel, just to allow some people to contribute. Would that be okay? And I think you.
Yeah, I'll just have to leave. I'm getting to another meeting. I'm so sorry that I just want to say thank you for a great program, and as I said, I'm so happy to see all these young women that are very known to us as well, engaging and disrupting these things. And this conversation should continue. We should be able to discuss and find time, create time and moments, and be able to talk and share experiences. But the only thing I want to just leave everybody with, there have been lots of issues about women being there was enemy, women not supporting women, women not being there for women. But what we have to also understand, we have not been taught to support each other. We have not been taught to be there for each other. We have been taught to support and hold and be custodians of our traditions, culture, and men. So it will take a lot of generation for us to come out from that. So we just have to be patient and not allow also that to be used against us, like divide and rule as well, because you see it a lot on social media. I don't expect women to support me if they don't understand what I'm standing for. They don't understand the issues I'm raising about, if they don't even experience it, because this is a generation of oppression and patriarchal oppression, just the same way as we are oppressed as Black people. So this is the same thing that's happened to women. So we should just always be mindful and not allow that to distract us. You wouldn't expect women to support. You would expect, in fact, sometimes they become even harder than men. Because I remember the discussion we had about this whole thing around gay and thing. There are women calling me lesbian, and I was laughing, Yeah. So these are some of these issues. So let's just be mindful of that. Let's just continue the discussion. Let's just continue the fight and just ignore. Women will come. They will come. And yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for explaining the young women who take their time to be here and to share their experiences with us. And we share this platform. Let's hope this thing continues. Thank you so much, Fatu, for calling through this. And everybody, thank you.
Thank you, Nay. Thank you very much. I think those were very inspiring. You talked about the deeply rooted culture, because it's generation upon generation upon generation. And what we know about culture, although it's not stable, but it is really hard to unlearn, basically. So it does take time. And I think everybody on this panel appreciates that. I am going to call Fatu Jain, because I think there are we are running out of time. We really have to stop at 7 o'clock. So I'm going to allow just few callers to come in. Fatu Jain, she wanted to come in for a long time. So hopefully we can continue the conversation next week. If I can get Fatu Jain. Hello, Fatu.
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Can you all hear Fatu? Dafa taw, mu ngi taw foofu noonu.
Léegi nii la door mu ngi door yokku sax bu baax a baax xaw ma ne yéen ak maa dégg.
Jaay ñu ngi dégg waaw.
Waaw bala maa door di leen wax jërëjëf. Kontaan naa trop Fatou programme bi nekk na programme boo xam ne suñu interesting. Te maa ngi nuyu Touba. Yaa ngi maa dégg.
Yeah, ñu ngi dégg waaw.
Ok, xanaa di wax Touba mi fa nekk right now. Di nuyu Abdou ñoom mi la fi fa jaar Fatou Balde. Maymuna anti Ndey ñoom yëpp maa ngi leen a nuyu daal anti Sara daal ñoom yëpp.
Carry on, I'm just teasing. Oops.
It's really impressive. Network the Gambia.
Yeah, network bangi button. When you ready, carry on. Make it as snappy as possible. Yeah, I think settle go back. Dok. Hananga try it till no move about or something. Do they back? Wow. It's better now. Yeah. Wow.
The last time I went with my friend, and I put no, less than 15 years, severe interview. Man, I smart to be like, you get some. Sister, you nice. Hold on, if you about you, you understand all these things you're like, because gender is where there was so much because
yeah, I think the network isn't very good in Gambia. Why mung don wax some really important points. I'm going to ring Aliu Manjang. Aliu Manjang, do not waste time. I'm going to make it as snappy as possible because I'm aware that you guys have been sitting down for a long time now. Sarata, I don't know whether you've shared the link because some people are asking for the link of Zoom.
Yes, the link has been shared.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Aliu.
Yes, what was it?
Nam. Alka Aliu Moile, can you hear Aliu? Mbijang Dorong, you ready? Ika wasi kandi domandi ngame buke moy bake. Ha, sa bete ata. Ya like ini muso ika muso le confront so ibe ka wasi kandi lai sa jenge moy.
Okay, about nobody program telephone wata contribute. Jama pada jian nga paksuno menda nga solo mon bele jama tatare. And nga some of your panelists I challenge them why they be and I think that's a conclusion. I know it's a woman issue. It's a woman issue, but one of the perspective is very important there. Regardless, last point may make la one Jamal Jam the part of the Jam Tabao is by
Can you hear him? Can you hear him? Because as it seems a bit low, it's low. Your voice is low, Aliu. And Father Mandi. Right, I think we've lost Aliu. I think he's gonna be back again. I'm gonna try Aliu again. Malong fasila talebang sarata because musu strong be wala bijang yalong. So
Aliu manghanya mampare fulatata sembetala.
They were all very threatened by the presence of this panel, I think. Yeah, if you can carry on the conversation. Yeah, Aliu. Hello.
Yes.
Ha, say what is your
okay, member get you know like so I will
okay. Ha, say ngamere ke mo ila ba ke.
All right, left them for la valde mem force the definition of GBV and I think that's the violation that targets women. Now, mental and Kabako, whether it is good or I just want to pose a question. I know
honey, I'm all for it. I'm not for violation of no, I'm not for maybe more. I'm not for violation of that targets women.
No, it's a violence. That targets women
and men. I ask any and it's because I call gender them, so both aspects.
Okay, now let them highlight like doesn't matter whether for women or men. Not only is violence there, and we understand violence objectively. That is it there to understand or violence there? In other words, what indigo is there any universal definition of violence, which means what is considered violence?
Okay.
Like, can we objectively, pinpoint like this is what we call violent practice or whatever we call it? That's first question. Secondly, you talk about statistic like feel go in abuse like I think statistic is one thing, methodology is another. How they reach that statistical, that's how they reach that statistic, because very important to know whether this is deductively driven. And here you will have the researcher who would define for the interviews through instruments what those violence mean, because actually about operationalized data so at the management and understanding of violence will be in the bad dictator, not necessarily a so I think that's very important.
Yeah.
So other question mamaling maybe the toxic attitude and that the same, and I think Tufa, they all talk about this patriarchal order, and to the extent that I'm referred, but they talk about like how this is set even at the time of the birth, and thank Javi Fernandez, Sarah Fernandez Talent. But let me understand, how can we establish logical connection between say that practice comes out na bisaji killing fire by fenga fula saji fula fire wala ngafo ko chokata wulo ko how can we connect that to what is happening now in terms of for the toxic attitude of men towards women, they harass and kanya fikang and in competition how can we hold our tradition for such things, and
how can we hold tradition responsible for such acts?
Because they are referring to the how patriarchal order is established since our like Nagulu Wato, Kabiru Wato Menedin Guluta. So it how can we make connection, logical connection between that and now what we are seeing, for example, Bada Musoye Kuma food for Musoye Waleya Balote described. And how can we exclude or include modernity here? Because most of the time, tradition and if we go back to our tradition, we lost knowledge. We will find that these are recent in our own societies. Because
I think we've lost Aliu. Aliu's connection is not very good. Who wants to go first? Because today I'm just a facilitator. I've got an answer for Aliu, but I'm not gonna say anything. I'll allow you, the panelists, to answer.
Okay,
Aliu.
can I come in, please?
Yes, Alata.
Yeah. Just to answer one point, what Aliu just mentioned here in regards to when a woman gives birth to a baby boy and a baby girl. You know, Fatou Balde did mention that when a woman gives birth to a baby boy, sometimes they will slaughter 2 rams, or and when it is like one, like a baby girl is 1 ram. And I also buttress on that to say that Nimuso Wuluta, when they said it's a baby boy, they say, oh wow, it's a superwoman. Ali, connecting these things to these two things together, the culture and what is happening in this generation is the fact that men, all those men who are into that that kind of habit, beating their women or abusing their women, they've been brought up in a society whereby people tend to see men being greater than women, like boys being greater than girls. So it can mean for them wo connection wolom connection because ye find your kono. So if you grow up in such kind of society, obviously your belief will be that whatever I do as a woman, as a man, is good, because the society will accept it. Because and then also he also mentioned that boys at the beach, like what Mama said, those boys who small boys, you know, calling women all sorts of names. The same thing. We come back to the same issue, because those boys also the same thing. The society they grew up, they think that whatever they do is fine by the society. And the other, the most important thing here is that most of the women, they also think that those kind of things is fine by them, because they see they always say this is our society. This is the society we saw ourselves in. Like Tufa just mentioned, you don't have to you don't have to threaten our peace, because we have been living here peacefully. So if most of the women, if they see young girls coming up with such ideas, trying to sensitize their fellow women or trying to sensitize people, what they will say is that xale yi léegi dañ goog wala xale yi dañ yabaate ñun fii lañ nekkoon ñun suñ maam yi lii lañ daan def mama wol nga ñin taral so Aliou ni la moy kam ni connection o ñi connecting the culture to what is going around
with violence, with GBV.
Yeah, with violence, yes, in this generation is that because dindiwul ye fanje wala kono, and the society fanang ya accept muso dol fanang bige ya accept, and it is a pity. They said something here which is really important as well. They said we should have a safer place before we can create a safer place for other women, which is true. Because us, the women, if we don't create a safer place for ourselves, How do you expect us to create a safer place for our fellow women? And if we don't support ourselves, we need to know what we need. First of all, we need to know our needs. We need to know our rights. We need to identify all those things in order for us to know what the solution would be. Because if you don't know your problem, you won't know the solution. So it's a pity if you see women trying to go against their fellow women. This is what they call violence against women. So when we talk about violence here, it's not just about violence between husband and a wife or boyfriend and a girlfriend. Violence against women to women violence is also happening, but most of them wouldn't realize this is a violence. Like when Tufa's case was on the social media, I saw women who were saying, this is not true. You know, I wouldn't go much into that because I think
go into the
everybody has said
but thank you
a lot about that. So Aliu minom kuoti moli e fande min kono ikawole kai ka connect walam connection o nyinti because kabiri dinding ikami moy kafo dinke woten so ni but obviously they go by those culture.
I know we are running out of time, but I just wanted to comment on Aliu's comment there.
Okay.
Because Ali was using both Mandinka and English, but I think I picked up something that has to do with, Ali talked about violence. How do we define violence? That violence is subjective.
Is there a universal definition of violence? How do we define?
This is where our problem starts. When we start talking about women issues, then we are even asked to define what do you mean? There is, I think, Ali, my answer to that is we all have a common understanding of what violence is. When somebody has done something to your body that you feel you've been violated, you feel it yourself. So that doesn't, there is not a difference between a man and a woman. Because I'm a woman, I shouldn't be asked, you demand that I define what I mean by violence when I say I'm being violated. Like when I say I'm being raped, then I'm expected to come with a definition of rape, an objective definition of rape. What do you mean? How did it happen? That explanation, that means that you do not believe me. Because I have to use so much energy as a victim and use so much energy in trying to make you understand. I think that is the knowledge that our men themselves need to acquire themselves. You are an intellectual yourself. Do not need data. We do not need data. I know it's talking about data.
And it's all academic. It's all academic, It's all academic stuff.
Now sensitizing men, I do not recite, I do not need data to convince you that violence against women is a reality in the Gambia. It's a problem and it should be addressed. We don't need data about that. We all know that it exists. So that was just my explanation, my response to what Ali said. Though I did not pick up everything, that was what I understood from what he was saying.
Yeah, he talked about, I'm going to come to you too.
And he talked about the patriarchal establishment as well.
Yeah, how do we connect the culture, the traditional way of living and GBV? What's the connection there?
Because with that one, Fatu Balde touched on that, and then as Sarah said, these are just some norms and cultural values that are in our societies, that are in our cultures, that men are born with. We talk about these entitlements, these privileges that men are born with, and it starts from when you are being born. And it's not just that we are talking about dafa buga nyari har when it's a boy, it's 2 rams, when it is a girl, it's 1. Because that is exactly how it starts. Because even in the home, you should clean as a boy, and as a girl, you're just expected to do this and do this, the gender norms. So we can connect them very easily. Looking at our society, you will know that this patriarchy and the toxic masculinity and boys' privilege entitlements are all linked to sexual and gender-based violence. So as an academician, Ali has himself, I think doing a little research will just show you that how these things are linked. It's an intersection. It's an intersection. When we talk about gender as a woman, it's an intersection of so many things. It's about my race. When we talk about, for example, racism, and we talk about feminism, we talk about that. It's an intersection of so many things. And those things summed together leads to gender-based violence. I think that is just how one can explain it.
Thank you. Tufa.
Yeah, to my brother Aliu, I mean, so 2 points. The other point, I'll try to like make it as simple in the best way I think we can make it clear. Because I think what Ali was asking, as he said, the logical connection between the patriarchy we are talking about right now to these other nice, lovely, smooth little traditional practices that we have that we identify as. But also the other one I think is very clear and it's important. It's the idea on data. Two different parts of the same sword here. One is women and victims do not have to explain to you the details of their ordeal in order for you to consider it violence. One. The other part of the sword, though, is we do need data in the world that we live in. I believe in data. And when I go to Human Rights Watch and if I go to World Health Organization and I see data on 1 girl in 4 in West Africa is raped, 1 girl in, what exactly does this data mean, right? The questionnaire, I understand what Ali was saying. The questionnaire that we give to people depicts what kind of violence we are talking about. Did the person who speak to these people say, "Nid dafla risu wala risu wata? Kari mate la fama maila." What is mate la ma maila? You know, it's not clear information. And that way, you might be writing on paper representing not the stories of women and what has happened to them, but representing things that are very vague, right? So I agree with Aliu. And I think the reason why Aliu wanted to say, and his internet got cut off, to say that these things were not happening, they were not here. If we go back to our traditions, yes, they were happening. You didn't know because you are a data person and there wasn't data available at the time to tell you that story. And now because you're looking at a few data and these conversations are happening, you feel like they're prevalent now, but they were not prevalent before. They were. We didn't talk about it, we didn't investigate it, and there wasn't data on it. So I think data to some extent and the right data is very helpful. Like Gambia, to be specific, if you want to get the exact numbers in the Gambia, it's almost impossible. We don't know. We don't know. The numbers are generalized. Even with UN, the numbers are like 1 in 4. Great. But how long ago? What is the latest data we have? The last census that we did in the country, did we include gender-based violence? What are the exact and most current numbers on that? So I think we have to put some efforts on data, of course, because it exposes the gravity of what's happening and sometimes not even wholly, just parts of it. It's worse than what the data is saying. It's not like it's better than what the data is saying. So I support you on that, on putting emphasis on data and making sure we are very clear on what violences we're talking about. Now, when it comes to the connection between the traditional practices and patriarchy, as we are talking about it, the idea and the common theme is the theme of power. Power. The idea of killing 1 goat instead of 2 goats, that's a power dynamic. Now, all those little traditional practices that you're saying, what it does, it makes the other gender feel like they're powerful enough. Now, when you grow up with that power between you, that power is what gives you the fit. That power is what gives you the audacity to stop that girl at the beach. That is the link, right? The same way the white woman has the power and the white privilege to walk in our beach and think they can talk to any man, sleep with any young person. The connection there is the power she is given as a white person, because she will not stop another white man in England, in UK, in Finland, and harass them at the beach. Why? Because their level of power and their status in society is equal. So the boy being able to do that to the girl at the beach, the boy being able to say "yang neh" to somebody they do not know, comes from a sense of power that has been instilled in him from a very young age by all these different preferences we give to boys compared to men. So that is a logical link in a simple way, if that's what you're trying to get. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Tufa. Ali wants to come in again, but we wouldn't have the chance to do that. I think next week we can carry on. Absa wants to come in. Absa?
Yes, so what I wanted to add is that, so the conversation about culture is not exclusionary of violence that women experience, because there are cultural practices themselves that are violent towards women. Practices like female genital mutilation, practices like child marriage. And it's important that these are to recognize that these are practices that have been normalized in our society over generations, and it doesn't in any way make it right just because it is a cultural practice. And to go back to the issue of social conditioning, people talked about it too. Everybody on this panel talked about how we are socially conditioned, both men and women, to behave a certain way, to expect to act a certain way. We are expected to present our gender, and our roles in society are defined a certain way. And I wanted to add that nobody, men, women, none of us benefit from an unequal society. When women are subjected to violence, it affects every single person in our society. When we define gender roles, by defining what women's role are in society, we are implicitly defining what men are supposed to be and how they are supposed to act, which is limiting to everybody. I think that we have to come to a recognition that all people, regardless of our gender, deserve to live in dignity, we deserve to live life to our fullest potentials, and to live fulfilled lives. And in our context, it's to come to a recognition that women are valuable and we do not deserve to be violated by any means, and that women have meaningful contributions to make to our society and to our own advancement. And as a result, regardless of whether, we need to recognize that violence limits these potentials for all of us, and that we do not all benefit when that happens. And I want to shift the conversation back to the topic today, which is the hotline 1313. If you need help, if you're listening to this and you are undergoing violence, you can call the hotline. One other thing that I want to add to that is my hope is that the people who are working on the hotline are people who have training on trauma-informed care, because a lot of people who will need this service are coming with a lot of trauma, and they have experienced violence, and as a result, it's important to understand how to work and support individuals who are experiencing trauma, and how we can make sure their needs are supported and are met. And my hope is that that is taken into consideration. A lot of other women have spoken here today. A lot of them I look up to, Auntie Ndei, Auntie Sarata. We have the Dr. Ramos and Mam Yasin. I think a lot of what we need to do, we've talked about women themselves, ourselves contributing to uphold male dominance and patriarchy and violence in our society. I think a counter to that would be to create space where we're recognizing women who paved the way for a lot of us to be here today, a lot of us to know what we know today, and to celebrate women who have broken barriers and continue to do that. That way, a lot of us and other girls will see ourselves and connect with these women to know that regardless of whether we've experienced violence or not, and what society is telling us that we are, that we can look up to women who are redefining what that means and are taking up space, are owning their bodies, and are challenging the norms that continue to limit and subjugate women in our communities.
Thank you. I think that's a beautiful way of wrapping up today, actually. We've been here for just over 2 hours. I think Ali's question, we would look into it again next week if we have the chance to come back here, or the week after. But I think the issue on stats, on statistics, I think he was talking about methodology. How authentic is that methodology used? Because I know Ali, I've engaged with him a lot of times, and he is this person who looks at, when you talk about data, he wants to know how the research was conducted, who are the people that they spoke to. And this, I talked about the statistics, and this is from UNFPA, and they're based in Gambia, their gender unit, and they did the research in the Gambia. And it's an authentic research, and the 1 in 3 women have faced violence. It's all over, it's global data, so we know that that's from the UN, and we do believe in that data somehow, some way. If we don't believe the data from UN, who else are we going to believe? But It is unreported. I know that 1 in 3 is just the people who picked up the phone and access support. We're not even talking about the woman who is living in Badibu or in Kiang or in the rural areas who do not have access to pick up a phone and call or even access support. So whatever data we're presenting here today, it's not even close to the reality on the ground. And you know, we, as you said, we do not need data to authenticate what we are saying, because when Fatou Balde said how many of us face some sort of violence or abuse in your lifetime, just the panel here, everybody lays their hands up, because somehow, some way, we've encountered it. Okay, so we don't need a researcher or journal or an academic work to tell us, you know, Gambian women, you face this. No, we know it because we lived it. And we were brought up in that type of society. And Tufa, you've raised a very important point about it not happening in the past. And you said it did happen in the past, but because it's a taboo subject, it wasn't talked about. You will not sit in those days 10, 20 years ago and talk about FGM on Facebook. You won't talk about rape on Facebook. You won't even talk to your friend about it, because these are taboo subjects. We don't talk about sexuality as women in the Gambia. That's not how we are trained. That's not how society constructed us. We as women, we are constructed, or we are trained to believe that we are inferior. We have to follow, you know, then you want to come, you say that, you know, that's what we are believed. That's how we are molded, basically. That's what I want to say. So the connection, what the connection is. Ni brought up to Swokonomea long way to Dinkeo. Yaita did a muso object da malti. You know, the muso woman jarifem offerendina. Italian Kyo, Italian Tatala school, Itamanian Kabulu Coke, Itamanian Italian protectorate and head of family. Near muso je dawada, Iba Mari respect Renyadi. So that's the connection. And we see that a lot of young people, young men who are brought up in violent homes, ends up, not always, but majority of the time, they end up being perpetrators. That's what we know. We've worked with women. That's my field. I work with DV victims every time. And when they tell you the history of the perpetrator, you know that either ala parents or benung nyama or a brought up to swallow all the time. So there is a connection. Okay, I see somebody else calling me, and I know after you want to come in, and it's 7:30. I'm going to give you 1 minute to wrap up, and then I'll call this person and we'll call it an evening, I think. Go on.
You actually touch on the point that I wanted to bring in, and it's the question of the validity of data that we're talking about. I think that in conversations like this, those sort of arguments are actually a distraction to the issues that are being raised, because the reality is there are a group of women who are sitting in front of you and they're telling you we've all experienced some form of violence in our lifetime. And you still question if the data that is out there is accurate or not. It makes me feel invisible and my reality feel invisible and minimized, because the point is not whether the data is valid or not. The point is there are women who are telling you that we are experiencing violence in our community, and this is a problem for our society, for us, and for you, and that we need to come together to recognize that our way forward as a community is dependent on solving these issues that continue to limit our potentials to develop to our fullest potentials, you know?
True.
And that's the point. That's the point, period. And
I mean, I am a victim and I've never done a survey. I've never part of any survey that counts me. Does that mean I'm not? Yeah.
I think it all comes back to this thing of not Gambian people or Gambian men not believing that Gambian women have agency. When we say this happens to us, we actually have that capacity to think and say, yes, this happens to us and you need to believe us. Because all the time they think me as a feminist, all these things that I'm talking about is something that I've learned from the West. You know, this is how I was. If I was in Gambia, I wouldn't be thinking like that. And because I'm thinking like this is not my thinking. This is a Western ideology, or it's a Western thinking. And I think we need to start believing in our people.
Yes,
you
believing
know?
in our people.
This is me saying, you know, as you said, Tufa, you faced it. This is you. This is your experience. Nobody else have to tell you. You don't need to be sitting at the UN or the WHO to maybe to increase followers or whatever. This is your personal stories, your experience. And we as Gambians, we need to begin to believe our people because we have agency as women. We do.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's how I'm going to wrap up. I'm just going to allow each and everyone to have 30 seconds just to wrap up. And hopefully I'll see you here next week again. I'll start with Sarata because you're already unmuted.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in just to add on what Tufa was saying in regards to the data. Okay, yes, we don't need a data for people to believe. So the reality here is that our people, our own, our Gambian people, we need to wake up from our dreams. We need to realize that nobody can come on board on social media to say this has happened to me when it doesn't happen to. For example, 5 years ago, Tufa was not saying anything, you know. So because of probably she might be thinking, if I come out, will people believe me? So the reality here is, in order for us to eradicate issues that is going around here, is for people to start believing in the victims, to start believing in them and to support them in whatever ways they can. Yeah, that's what I have to say at the moment.
Thank you. Tufa?
I mean,
any final words?
Yeah, we cannot wrap everything up in one sitting. And again, as usual, whether it's the data conversation, there's two sides to it, of course, but sometimes it's interesting how questions like that, believing, trusting, data, proficiency of stories are only required when it comes to women's issues or victims' issues, right? When the UN tells you majority of people in Gambia live under $1, you're not very enthusiastic for the data and where it comes from and all of those details. But I think we are taking up space, which is what's important. And as Absa said, it is important that we create spaces like that, where we recognize the journey, the people that have been here before us, and to also look at how we want to go forward and through the process to be very unapologetic and not sorry for any of our intentions, for any of the conversations that we have, to have it openly and honestly. And I know a lot of girls need to know that these numbers are there and they exist for them. And I hope the 1313 number, whoever is behind that or the organizations that are responsible for it, coordinate with other organizations in the Gambia, like OPI Gambia, or other therapists, people that are vast in helping people in all forms and dimensions as well. So I hope that is just not a number and tell me it's not available, or if I call it, they tell me the person number you're calling is busy right now. I hope it actually makes changes, and it is a safe space and a place where women can call in and receive actual help. Other than that, thank you to you and everybody on here. It was great.
Thank you, Tufa. And Absa?
Well, thank you so much for having us. And it was nice to share this platform with all of you. Just to wrap up, again, it's important to listen to victims and survivors, to listen to the voices of people who have not traditionally been given space and platform, and to tell women out there to own their space and to claim it, because it's going to take reclaiming and owning what we have for others to recognize that we actually earned it. And it is our right to have those spaces. It is our right to be ourselves, and nobody has a right to subject any of us to violence and abuse. And just that's all I have to say. And the hotline is there, again, to emphasize 1313, call it if you need help. When you need help or when you think someone else needs help, and to emphasize practicing a lot of self-care for all of us who are engaged in this work, because this is not an easy work. I mean, it's hard. We take for granted how much it costs us to be in this space, to talk about our experiences, to share it, to highlight issues that continue to traumatize us and to subject us to violence and abuse and inequality, inaccessibility, and to recognize that that work is a hard work, to celebrate ourselves, to acknowledge that, but to also take care of our own mental health as we do that as well.
Yeah, that's really important. Thank you for that useful reminder. I'll now go on to Maimuna. Maimuna, see, are you still with us?
I'm right here.
You are here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Fatu, for this initiative. I don't think I've done anything more valuable this weekend than participating in this debate, or should I say, for a long time. And I acknowledge and appreciate the contributions here, especially the intergenerational conversation here. That is something I appreciate too a lot, and seeing a lot of young women coming here like Absa, like Mina and Tufa, coming here to discuss, being brave enough to, like Absa said, it's not just about creating safe space, but we have to own these spaces. We have to own these spaces. And one thing that I want to mention here is that this platform is not a platform where we are coming to authenticate anything. It's not a platform about authenticity. We are not required to come with data to say that, okay, but for me, that is just a distraction. It is a distraction. This is not a platform to authenticate, and that would just, it's another way of distracting us, another way of taking away our agency, because what we are talking about is something we experience, something we know it's a problem in our society. Gender-based violence is a reality. Many Gambian women are experiencing it, and we want to put a stop to that. We want to see what are the root causes, how do we address this, how do we move away from these negative patriarchal behaviors that are detrimental to our mental health, to our bodies as women, and just moving forward, taking the conversation forward. So I think we should continue the conversation. I'm very, how do I say, grateful for being here and sharing this space with so many dynamic women. And Fatu, we really should continue the discussion. Thank you for having me. You all brave ladies, and yeah, that's what I had to say.
Thank you, Maimuna. I think it's been a very fruitful conversation, and you know, there has been a lot of engagement on Facebook. When you finish, you can go back and look at the chats and the contribution. I really want to say from the bottom of my heart how grateful I am for you all to spare your time. It's more than 2 hours. It's not easy, you know, and I'm already very tired. And I know it's a Saturday evening and you dedicated your time to be here. So I'm really grateful. Thank you for the time and your contribution. I couldn't have asked for a better panel than what I have today. And really, I would be getting in touch with you again to see if some of you or all of you would be available maybe next week or the week after to continue, because we haven't even discussed half of the things that I wanted us to talk about, which shows how timely this is, but also how not only controversial but very useful conversation that needs to be discussed. And just to remind our viewers that there is a new helpline, that's what initiated all this conversation. The GBV helpline in the Gambia is 1313. If you or someone that you know is suffering from gender-based violence, please do call the number and get support from them. And I want to say our viewers as well for all their contribution, our panelists, the Ndejobate, Mina, those who have left, Mama Linger, and Aisha Balde was not able to make it. Fatu Balde, we say thank you to you, and to each and every one of you here. We really appreciate you. Until hopefully next week, thank you F for the moderation. Thank you, Aliu. And Fatu Jan wanted to join in actually, and the network is not very good. Hopefully next week it will be better in Gambia. So hopefully we can carry on this discussion. And as you say, this is an ongoing conversation and we cannot exhaust everything in one meeting. So thank you again and have a good evening. I am F. Baji. Goodbye. Thank you.